Welcome to Sanmoon. Today, in this session, we are going to look into multiple ways of methods and how we can create multiple different methods with arguments and return types and things like that. Okay, as we know, in the previous sessions and previous videos, we have been clearly discussed from the scratch how we can create the Angular application project and how we can start with a component, and inside the component what and all things are there, and how we can bind a component, and inside the component what is the interpolation, and also how to bind a data variable inside the interpolation, as well as now we were looking into the methods and how to have able to attach the method to the event of a button. So all these things has been discussed in the previous videos. If you are new for this video, please check with the previous videos before continue. Now, as we know, the Angular project will have multiple components, and we were actually looking into one of the component, which is my component, and inside that we have been discussed about how to create a method and how to able to bind this method inside the HTML and to the click event of a button. So whenever we click the button, this method will able to call, and whatever the statements have been written inside that method will execute. That means, and also we have been discussed inside the method, it's nothing but JavaScript we're going to write. So this all things has been explained in the previous session. Now we wanted to discuss how many types of methods is possible inside a component. There are multiple types of methods are there, and we can able to declare or create, and we can use within the component. One of them, as we discussed, if you create a method without any access specifier, like we have an access specifier like public or export, and also like private, if you are not specified anything, then it will be a public method and it can be used anywhere. That means outside of this class as well. Whereas if you create private and declare a method, then this particular method can be able to use within the class, and it cannot be used outside the class. Outside the class means a class is a component class here, and it will be started with this flower bracket and ends with this curly braces, and within this curly braces only the visibility of a method will be there, and it cannot be accessible outside this class. That means what, even though you wanted to try to access this method in HTML, it is not possible, and it will be going to throw error. Let me look into that now. So what we have been done as of now is we have a method here, display name, and inside the display name we have a statement console.log, and when you are able to call this method, and that method will able to display in the console the message display name method executed. This message will be displayed. But here we need to observe, here I have been declared now as private. Since I have been created as private, you can see whenever we save, we can see that error. That means what, this error is clearly telling what we need to understand here is, since this is a private method, we cannot access in HTML. Okay, so we have to use public method only. That is the thing you need to understand. Whenever you make it default, that will be automatically become a public, and it is available, so it is succeeded. And let us see here. Let me open the developer tools, because console will be there in the developer tools, and when you click that button, you can observe there the message will be displayed. So that is one thing. Second thing, when you have a method, how many currently if you see what is the method, a method will have the syntax of the method will be, the syntax of the method will be always access specifier, name of the method, arguments, and return type. Okay, so that is how the syntax of the method will be. Here if you see there, this method display name is doesn't have any specified access specifier, in the sense it is taken always public as access specifier. Here we need to always concentrate the signature of the method. As we discussed, there are some of them, most of them are by default, it can be taken care. That means if you are not provided, the particular part will be taken care by the JavaScript automatically. So in this case, in our case, we are not provided any public or private or whatever the access specifier. If you are not provided also, it will be considered as valid, because by default it will become a public access specifier. Now after that, the second part of the method will be the name. The name of the method will be the meaningful name what you write inside the function statement. Based on that, we'll always give the name, and that name always can be meaningful. And in JavaScript and TypeScript point of view, the method name always starts from the small letter, and it will follow the camel case. Camel case means whenever any new word started in the method name, it will always capitalized. So this is how it will be, and that should be mandatory. A method name has to be there, that is mandatory. Okay, there is no default for that. And third thing you need to understand, the argument list. Argument list always go inside the method parenthesis, and there is possibility that you don't want to give any argument. That means whenever you are not declared any argument, and that will become a no argument method. No argument method means that method is not having any argument declared. That means what? When anyone calls that method, nothing can be able to give it to the method at the time of calling. Let us see, for example, in this case, I have declared a method argument A, and A will be type number. So in this case, we have declared one argument A in the number type. That means whenever someone calling this method, they has to send to this method a number that will be placed to the A variable, and that it will be available for us as a local variable within the method. So let us print that value. Now if you see there, if someone calls this method, there has to be pass the value for A, and that value should be in the number format. Okay, let us see now. I have saved this, and let's observe what would be there for A. We were already calling this method in our HTML on the click event. Let us observe here. You can able to see there will be multiple errors coming there, because expected one argument but got 0. That means what? It's clearly telling us this method will accept or expected one argument, which is a number argument, and we are not passing anything. That's the problem. So you have to pass whenever you declare argument to the method. How many arguments? There is no limitation. You can able to create multiple arguments, any number of arguments, and that could be comma separated like this. Any number of arguments can be able to declare in a method, but only thing we need to remember, whenever any method will have an argument, we have to pass value to the argument at the time of calling that method. Now we are calling that method in HTML, so I have to pass one argument, and that should be number. So currently I've been hard coded with the 10, and I'm saving it with that, and let's observe what's going to happen in the browser, and it is now valid. Whenever I'm clicking that button, I can see 10 has been printed in the console. That means what is happening here, the argument is kind of input to the method, and that input is passed by the caller. Who is the caller in this case? In this case, HTML button is the caller of the method, and the method, whomever is the caller, he has to send the argument value while calling the method. That is simple. Now I will take one more example in this case to just explain you the same thing again. I have one more method called demo, and the demo will also have the statement console.log, and this is demo, and I'm going to take one argument over here, name, and that will be a string. So you can understand here how we are declaring arguments. Always arguments will be declared with the name of the argument. This is the variable name, and the data type of the argument, which is colon separated. You have to put the colon and then put the type of the argument. That means what type of data you wanted to store, or what kind of data you have to pass when we are calling this method. That's what it is actually telling us. Now, let's print that over there. So, whomever here we need to understand, whomever is calling demo, they has to pass the value to the argument. So now let us try to call this method in this display name itself. As we discussed in the previous session, we have to use, while we are calling that method, we have to use this keyword, because this means current object. Always class is creating object automatically in the Typescript, and each and every instance variables and behaviors or methods will be part of that object, and we are trying to call that method which is the part of that object, and this means the current object. Okay, this keyword can be able to explain in the later sessions. Just now you just remember how to call methods or how to use any instance variables within the class. You have to always use this keyword. So now in this example I'm using this demo. That means what? This method I'm trying to call within the other method, and you observe clearly there is a compilation error actually showing here, the same kind of compilation error which is expected, one argument but got 0. That means we have an argument declared over there in the method, you have to pass it. If there is no argument declared, then this particular statement is valid. If you have declared the argument, you have to pass the value to the argument. That means what? When you have declared a argument, I have to pass the value, which is also needs to be considered what type of value it is. It should be string. Now I'm trying to pass the number, which is not suitable over there. That is also, it will be going to complain in the compilation error. Okay, so what we need to do, always string will be under quotation. So I just pass a string over there, and that particular string is passed to the name, and that's going to be printed over there. Let us see that. And how it is happening, whomever calls this display name, then this display name will execute whatever the statements inside. In this statement, demo is also there. So demo will be called from the display name, and this is also going to be executed. That's how the flow will be. So you need to remember that. Now who is calling the display name? The caller of the display name is a button. So I'm clicking on the button. So the display name will be executed, and the display name will call the demo, and demo will be executed. Let us see that. Did you just observe here? So the display name method is executed with the value 10, and the demo also executed with the value Prasad. And you need to remember here, you can able to always remember the argument will always have the data type, and the value of the argument has to be passed in the same data type. Otherwise that will become a compilation error. Now this is the first and foremost thing. Second thing, if I have a multiple arguments, in this particular case, let's take an example which is add. Let us consider this example, addition of two numbers. In this example, I'm just creating method add, and the argument will be first number in the type number, second number, also the type will be number. So in this example, what we are going to do here is just add that first number and second number and display in the console. So let us do that. So I'm going to create one more variable here, which is total is equal to first number plus second number, and I'm going to print the total in the console total. So here if you wanted to observe one more thing, always while we are creating a variable, I'm just creating using const or let based on the requirement. Let means it's a variable, constant means it is not a variable and we cannot reassign the value. Okay, and here first number and second number, two arguments coming in the argument list of the method. So we discussed already, whenever anyone calls this method add, they has to pass the value for first number as well as second number. Then only it will become a valid, otherwise it will become a compilation error. Now let us save this and try to call this method in the button. Now let us change the button like add, and I'm changing the method here as add, and I'm passing 10 comma 20. That means this will be always maintain the order. When we are passing multiple arguments, you have to understand it will maintain the order. Order means first value will be always passed to the first argument and the second value will always go to the second argument. Like that the order will be maintained. In that case, if you need to understand while passing the values, we should be very careful. We need to understand what argument and where you are passing. So that is also most important thing. Now in this particular case, we have been hard coded 10 and 20, and let us see what's going to happen. Saving it. Let us see. We can see the add button. I'm clicking on that add button. I can see total 30. So this is how multiple arguments can be able to create. Like that. Let's create one more method, which is sub. First number, the type number, second number, again the type will be number, and let's print the same thing. Like I'm creating one constant, which is difference is equal to first number minus second number, and try to print that in the console, the difference. Now I have a method. Try to add this method in the new button. So I'm creating a button which is sub, and I'm binding that method to the sub button to the click event. Now I'm passing the values to the argument, which is 20, 10. Now let us understand here. We have two methods created. First method is add, second method is sub, and both the methods are having first number and second number, two different arguments, and both arguments are in the number type. So we need to remember, whomever is calling this method, they has to pass the values to the arguments, and automatically we write the program and use that argument. Whatever the statements you wanted to write, we can write it. Currently we just add both the arguments values and assign to the one of the temporary variable and printing in the console. Same thing is applies to the subtraction as well. Let us observe. So we have two buttons, add and sub. Clicking on the add, we can see the total 30. Clicking on the sub, we can see the difference is 10. This is how we can able to pass the values. So there are multiple ways like this in the methods. I'm stopping the session over here. In the upcoming session, we'll see multiple ways of usage of methods and arguments as well as return types. Thank you very much.